Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Dan Raju. Dan, excited to have you on the show.
Gresh, thanks for having me on the show. Really excited.
Yes, I'm excited as well, and all the awesome things that you're doing. And of course, before we jumped into the interview, I want to read a little bit more about Dan so you can hear about some of those awesome things. And Dan is the Chief Executive Officer of Tradier. Dan has overall responsibility of Tradier in the company's strategy and direction. And under his leadership, Tradier has grown rapidly from an innovative product to an essentially infrastructure fabric that powers 200 plus investing platforms globally and serving some of the most active traders in the market. In his 25-year career as a technologist and entrepreneur, he has launched many successful online retail and financial products. Prior to founding Tradier, Dan was the chief information officer of Trade King, now Ally Invest. And prior to that, he held senior executive level positions for large companies like the Associated Press, Borders Bookstores, Charming Shops, and NCR. Dan received his Bachelor's of Science degree in Chemical Engineering from JN Technology University in India and a Master's in Computer Science from the University of Mississippi in the United States. And I was listening to an interview with Dan, and he mentioned that Tradier was kind of like trading in a box. So I think it's really cool and awesome, like all the things that they've been able to do and build. And I'm super excited to kind of jump in. And I think he mentioned in one of those interviews that he kind of has the mentality of always kind of looking to build, to grow. And he didn't use the word disrupt, but I'm going to use the word disrupt sometimes industries and make things a little bit better. So Dan, excited to have you on. Or are you ready to speak to the IMCO community?
I'm excited. Looks like you have a great community, and I'm happy to share my thoughts with them. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to have you on. So I guess to kind of kick everything off, let's rewind the clock a little bit, hear a little bit more on how you got started, what I call your CEO story.
So I'm I was born and brought up in India. I'm a chemical engineer by my education. I have a master's in computer science. You know, I had spent a lot of my early career, trying to understand the enterprise and the business that surrounds the enterprise. And what made amazing sense to me was how businesses get created and how new businesses come and take over existing stack of businesses. That really fascinated me. So I worked in the consulting side for a little bit, then worked for NCR, like you were saying. Then eventually, over my career, I worked in some senior level, C-level positions at a few large retail firms. But one of the key elements that always, but my role has always been on the technology side. Um, Somewhere in 2008, after going from retail to media, I had basically discovered my passion for, online retail investing. I mean, I fundamentally thought that um, eventually people are going to want to manage their money more and more, right? The idea, I think, as people get more sophisticated, as people get more self-empowering, finances are based, the control of finances would move from large banks to the hands of individuals. And we and that was the heart of my interest into the retail finance side. So spent some time at Trade King, and eventually, the calling came at Tradier. This is about 10 years ago that what we had discovered before we started Tradier was a very simple concept, and that is that if you hundreds and if actually 4 to 7 million people are expected to jump into managing their own finances, and and the tools and the skills they needed to manage their finances on the retail side needed to be enhanced to a point they are empowered in a way that they are able to get all the advantages, the data, the content, the power of technology that the institutions had. So it's been a mission to basically go ahead and how do you bring that kind of institutional depth into the retail side. So that has been the mission that started Tradier. And the heart of it is basically empowering people to be able to make their own decisions financially. And I was focusing on the trading side. So that was the heart of it. So we started Tradier about 2000, end of 2012, 2013 timeframe. But we had a very unique view about it. So the idea was to take some of the most complicated stuff that is there in the brokerage space. Brokerage is the investing stack. If you think about the brokerage business, it's archaic, it's old, it is confused by regulation. It's misunderstood, and sometimes people actually have almost a negative opinion about traditional banks and brokerage firms. And so we had embarked on a vision to basically take that burdensome stack, and kind of open it up in a way that everybody has access to it, and all entrepreneurs all over the world could have access to the US stock market in a way that they can build and create new products. So the idea of empowering retail investors was letting them act, but is breaking the barriers that let other people offer great tools. So that was the idea, and API is a manifestation of that. So we started it in 2012. We have since grown substantially. I mean, we do today somewhere between close to 2% of the US retail market comes through us today. We power,
Nice.
like you said, hundreds and hundreds of platforms, and we support some of the most active traders in the market. But all through the growth of the company, and we have offices in primarily based out of Charlotte. We have a few other offices across the country, but all through the mission, it has been a very simple focus for us, and that is how do you unbundle technology through a set of great innovators and get it delivered in the hands of retail investors. And today we are proud to say that. I mean, we have been a part of the growth in the options space. That's basically giving people advanced trading capabilities. We do a lot of equity volume. We're servicing clients not just domestically, but close to 108 countries outside the US. But at the heart of it, it is really enabling them, empowering them by giving them the tools, technology, data, content, and service for them to make their own financial decisions. And that's kind of what we do.
Nice. I absolutely love that. And I don't know the word that kind of came to mind. I don't not as familiar with exactly all the ramifications of what this word mean, but is it like kind of decentralization? I know I hear that a lot around. Does it allow more accessibility, I guess, to people? It sounds like that everything that you all have been able to build.
See what's happening in the market, Gresh, is traditional banks and brokerages are being replaced by small, nimble, agile offerings, right?
Hmm.
See, for example, what a large bank meant to our parents has been replaced by more nimble product market fit applications. And so the traditional large brand association, that legacy association, is those services are being broken up and unbundled and decentralized to basically go ahead and be offered by small, large firms who are more agile, more nimble, more to the point, more closer to the customer, more listening, more reactive, and better, right? But the technology that enables that unbundling, or the technology that basically enables the decentralization, or I call it the collapse of the traditional brokerage firm and the large bank, that's where folks like Tradier come into play. And we kind of take that, what I call as decentralization on steroids. So if you think
Hmm.
about it in a very simple use case, if about 15 years ago, not that far away, if you maybe 15, 20 years ago, if Gresh wanted to offer, Gresh saw that there was a new way to help investors manage their money or empower them with something, you would have to do the following. You'd have to go ahead and become a registered entity or a bank. Then you'll basically have to go ahead and raise a ton of capital, which is not cheap, and then be able to connect with the monopoly of the exchanges and the market makers, deal with all of that, and eventually figure out a way to offer all of whom are traditionally going to fight you not to get there, because it kind of
Right.
unbundles, it kind of just questions their existence. And then eventually, I mean, you have to offer it, right? So what we do is we just take that heavy lifting away. I mean, you can technically, I mean, we have universities that teach how to build applications on top of Tradier. You can technically go ahead and build an application on top of Tradier to invest in less than half an hour to an hour. I mean, we've made
Yeah.
it that simple. And so the way to think about businesses like Tradier is that we are unbundling complexity, abstracting complexity, and making it consumable in simple ways so other people can innovate better than the past. So that's kind of what we do. Yeah, so it certainly is, you know, I guess, decentralization, and we are the agents that are decentralizing that structure. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I appreciate you breaking that down, and I love that word empowerment. And I think that a lot of maybe distrust might come from those larger, more legacy type organizations because you don't have that transparency to kind of understand or see what's happening. But as you kind of spoke to, in many industries, but especially in banking industries, the consumer's a lot more informed. They're a lot more empowered, and they are a lot more aware of what's happening, sometimes what's not happening. So I love everything that you foresaw and then have been able to kind of build and see come to fruition.
And I think the pandemic basically catalyzed and put fuel in the fire. So what had happened in the market is during the pandemic, right? You had the situation where there were tens of millions of people who were at home, highly connected. Pretty much, there is no other avenue for them to engage. No sports really going on. No gaming really, right? I mean, and the only fundamental structure is basically the stock market. So the stock market not only drew the attention of an entire new generation, it also went ahead and actually uh, uh, gave visibility. It was an index through which the country looked at itself, right? How was that performing? So it kind of
Mhm.
gravitated, galvanized what we believe in the US, roughly around 20 to 25 million people, new people, to jump into the market and jump into the market. And it's not only help people jump into the market. They're working at home. They didn't have to go to the work. They work, and so there are all kinds of factors, social, economic, and logistical, that helped. But in addition to that, it was a hyper cycle. Right, there was a lot of news, a lot of things going on, and people were doing an action reaction comparison of what they're hearing and how the markets are behaving. So it not only attracted a lot of people to come to the market, it also graduated them to want to and to stay in the market, play in the market, and take up advanced functionality. So one of the key indicators that show that jump and graduation had occurred in the market is you see the tremendous growth in the markets, like you see, for example, um, you saw crypto having quite a big of boost and then eventually tapering off. But more importantly, derivatives and auctions and these kind of more advanced instruments that have right now taken over the market and are continuing to stay. So you kind of got the whole market redefined during that. So I think you had an ideal situation where technology was unbundling and decentralizing, and then you had a social catalyst that kind of pushed it to the nth level. And today you're dealing with a much larger market, a much global market. And at the end of the day, it's there's sometimes people say negative things about meme stock rallies and all this thing coming up, and those things come and go. But eventually, what we if you the raw numbers will tell you that more people are in the market managing their money today than they were 5 years ago, and that's all that matters in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you to be able to kind of have that foresight and kind of understand, maybe not the pandemic itself, obviously. I don't think a lot of us knew exactly that was going to happen, but I feel like you had that pulse on the realization of people being able to kind of be more informed, make more decisions, and want to have more empowerment and control over that to be able to kind of create something. Because again, it didn't start during the pandemic; it started in 2012, and that you all have been able to build that. So, Wayne Gretzky has this quote where he says, "I don't skate to where the puck is; I skate to where the puck's going to be." And sounds like you've been able to kind of tap into that and understand that with everything you've been doing Tradier.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that that's always right. When you think of something, you eventually, when once you get a pulse of it, you kind of in most cases can guess where the pulse is
Hmm.
going. But the question is, are you able to jump ahead and wait for that pulse to reach you? And that's kind of
Right.
where I think the hard part for most entrepreneurs are. Is I see, and I've been an entrepreneur all my life. See, everybody has ideas. The difference between a person who has an idea and an entrepreneur is the entrepreneur just does it, right? And so,
Hmm.
are you willing to pull yourself and not almost being irrational about how you think about it? There's some amount of irrationality that makes successful entrepreneurs. So, and then you're able to go ahead and wait for the trend to come at you. And I think that's kind of what has happened to Tradier. But the key for us was we were clear about how, if you want to call it, how we were going to wait there or how we were going to service them. For us, it was pretty clear. We felt like that when retail comes in, It's going to be about technology, number one. In addition to technology, it's going to be about great service, number two. And at the heart of it, what is very important for us as a company to have the moral backbone to always do the right thing by that customer, right? And so we have kept that at the heart of what we do, right? It's saying always do the right thing, never take a shortcut. It'll take you longer to build a strong business like we are today, but eventually you're going to have a more fundamental stack that actually serves a larger scale than what you can do. So those were the drivers. And sometimes I think entrepreneurs need to, sometimes entrepreneurs are fascinated by the near term, which is a good thing to do. But I think there needs to be a fundamental moral driver and a cause that actually is going to sustain them over the journey as they grow the companies from small to large.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. It's almost as if it's that foundational element, but that filter as well too, determine. I think as you have those shiny objects that pop up, you get to make sure that it is along those same, tenets, the technology, the
Right.
service, making sure that you have that morality, all those things. It allows you to kind of filter through the shiny objects, the new things to understand, is that something where we need to start to pivot and change to, or start to look towards in a couple of years, or something that is just that shiny object and we need to say, okay, we're going to stay
Right.
true to these core tenets that we ultimately have. Do you feel like that's part of your or the organization's secret sauce, the ability to kind of tap into that and how that is manifests itself with everything you all have been able to build, the API, just all those things? Do you feel like that's part of what sets you apart and makes you unique?
Yeah, see, at the end of the day, businesses succeed because they are there for a purpose, right? And in most cases, successful businesses, the purpose is beyond the financial aspect. And companies, startups have to succeed because they have to believe in a common cause, right? And the cause just can't be we'll sell the company and make some money eventually, right? I mean, that has to be something, but you focus on that, and then that becomes a focus, and you never serve the customer or your client or the purpose or the industry well. Yeah, so for us, I think, it was about, doing the right thing. And for us, doing the right thing meant we're dealing with people's money. So let's measure not once or twice, but let's measure 10 times before we cut. That was very
Mhm.
important for us. And it was very important for us to be transparent. We felt like it was it's people should be able to connect with what we do and what we say, and not be lost in the complexity of what we say. That's very important for us. And the last thing is, when the doors are shut and you're working in the office, you have to carry those to everything that you do. The way you behave, the way you respond to a customer, the technology you build, and most importantly, the messaging you put out. So for us, I think that always do the right thing kind of a message, since we are fundamentally dealing with people's money, and not only just money of a money is, money for what a dollar means for $1 billion, for a person who has $1 billion, or a person who has got $10,000. A dollar is a dollar. It means the same thing for him, right? And it just is just as important, right? And so we kind of thought that we should take that responsibility very seriously. And we understood that we are questioning the existing bank and brokerage stack in the market. So on one side, we're dealing with a brand new way of looking at things. At the same time, we are talking about a brand new way of servicing people at the same time. And so we had to build a totally not so normal way to actually create the technology and service. So that has basically created a company today where we have very little iteration. The cause of the company is bigger than the individual, and people tend to own and create stuff because they believe in the end game more than themselves. So I think like that, yeah, that has been a fundamental driver that has kept the company alive, the company flourishing through all the ups and downs. And most companies, I always say this, right? Um, you hustle for 10 years and somebody calls you an overnight success, right? And that's kind of
Mhm.
how most companies are. I just don't believe startups make it. There's so much thought and effort put behind. You hear about it in a flash, but behind the flash there are so much effort and, most important, teamwork that make that happen. So
Yeah, I love that, and especially how that DNA is within the organization, the people within the organization, things that you're building and working on. I say often that we don't want to get so attached onto we don't want to get as attached to the how rather than the why, and being able to have that purpose, that mission is so huge because as we start to see things change, they evolve. But if you have that strong why, like we were talking about with that filter, it allows you to know this is the north star, this is what we're staying true to, while we'll continue to evolve, improve, and change. But at the same time, we know what our mission is, and as you said, no matter who's within the organization, I feel like if you can hang your hat or see that mission, that's going to be something that aligns everybody, and they know whatever they do is going to help to support that mission. So I think that's what gets everybody on the same page.
Very true. Very true. It has to be that for both, not only just for the near term, but for the long term for the company. And those, it's that element that actually keeps things going, no matter what the ups and downs are.
Absolutely love that. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or even a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
I say it's very simple. There's nothing called over communication, right? There's only one thing. There's good communication. There's not so good communication, but there's nothing called over communication. I think so. It's so one of the stuff that I learned is as over the last I guess at this point 25 years of managing people, and most importantly, taking companies or firms that from a concept to a market, right? It's I think it's very important for you to just be able to communicate what you're thinking about it at each point of time. It's sometimes not as important for you to defend what you were thinking about yesterday, today. If you get lost in wanting to defend what you were thinking about yesterday, then you're just not ever going. You're neither going to be agile, and people are not going to respect you. You have to basically take up the position that I'm in a journey, and I'm going to communicate my journey to the rest. It trickles down organizationally where everybody and the company knows that they're in a journey and they're not right every time. So I think that idea that you can actually go ahead and that idea that you can over communicate and let people understand where you are at each point of time, even in many cases you differing from what you said yesterday, it creates a culture in the company to scratch and redraw it every time. And so it creates a very agile, transparent journey kind of a culture where everybody is willing to scratch everything and redraw it a better way each time. And so that I found that is a much more effective way to do it versus a top-down instructive kind of an environment where you're kind of basically you're basically making a call and then you're sticking to it. And in most cases your decisions are not permanent. Decisions become right and wrong depends on what happens over time, right? It could be a great thing to use technology A today. 4 weeks from now it could be the worst thing to do. If you basically are if you As long as you basically are saying I'm going to change along and learn along, and that it actually opens up the doors for counter communication. It creates collectivity, it creates objectivity, and most importantly, it creates a sense of journey rather than a work environment. So,
Yeah, I absolutely love that, and I love that you use the word culture. That's actually exactly what was popping through my mind. Is like this is something that you have that's embedded within the organization. But I love that you marry that with the journey, because I think so many times if you have this culture of perfection, culture of not making mistakes, of not having any failures, then I think you're almost doing a disservice to yourself, your organization, also the people that we ultimately serve. So I think if you understand, as we get more data, more information, as we learn more, whatever it is that happens along that journey, it
right,
helps you, as we talked about, having that foundation, that filter there, to make sure that you're making the best decision for the time that you have right there. And if you
right.
kind of communicate that, over communicate that, to people within an organization, it's only going to set yourself up for people that also want to go with you along the journey.
True, very true, very true. I agree, and I've seen this. It's not very that kind. How do you get there? Different leaders take different paths to it, but I think it's about getting there, right? It's about getting there. So yeah, and many people do it different ways. I handle it through communication. I've seen a lot of people more successful than many of us who he do it through presence. People do it through. I mean, people are. delivering what I call as transparency and communication in so many ways. Sometimes it's just not verbal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, not getting attached to the how, but the why, and making sure at the end of the day, like you said so well, you just get there, which is so important. So, what would you consider to be what I would call a CEO nugget? This is a little bit more word of wisdom or piece of advice. I like to say it might be something you would tell to your favorite business client, or if you hopped into a time machine, you might tell younger business Dan.
I mean, I learn. I call it a journey, and all of us learn, and I myself learn to get better at it every day, I guess. See if there's something that I could say that what I learned from my experiences. It comes down to something that's very very simple, and that is that you need to have, and it's a nugget that I basically have found a lot of success in everything that we as a company do and what I do, and that is to know that when you are building something, you have to basically just not build the product, but build what you're going to do with the product, right? So I see a lot of young entrepreneurs basically getting caught up or lost in, I build something, the world is going to come running to me. And most often, that of not having to not just because they have not thought through what I would do with the product along with while I'm building it. It has a very sequential way of creating a business where you create a business, you create a service, you isolate yourself, build something, and you open the doors. And in most cases, you find nobody's coming, right?
All
But
right.
but I think so, and so it's just as important to know from day one. In fact, I sometimes say people I would hire a marketing person before I hire a tech person in many businesses, right? So it's important to know it is a much more challenging task to go to market than it is to actually build a product. So I see a lot of entrepreneurs focusing on the product, which is absolutely important to do. The product is the driver, but the success comes from building a go to market strategy while you're building the product and not sequence one behind the other. And in most cases, I think entrepreneurs, when they do that, they get caught up in a few things. First of all, they if they had thought about the product market fit, or doing the market research, they would build the product a little differently. Number one, and number two is entrepreneurs. There's no entrepreneur who has more money than he wants, right? Never happens.
Mhm.
If there's a business that has more money than it wants, then it eventually is going eventually the culture and the company die, right? So when you sequence it, you most often run into cash problems when you're building a business, right? And that's because it takes longer to build. It just about takes longer to build a product. It takes even longer to get the product into the hands of the people you want to get it to. So and that's the second thing that I see a symptom of that. And the third thing I also see is the fact that I think sometimes it's very hard after you touch the market to come back and redo something. So I think all three become if there is something that I would tell based upon my experiences, having been an entrepreneur for a long time and what I see, and I work with a lot of startups, many clients, many in the ecosystem in the Northeast, particularly in the financial services side. And we as a business offer an API that hundreds and hundreds of startups kind of use. Is that I could put my finger on probably 80% of the ones that who didn't make it and say, I wish they thought about how to launch the product while they're building the product. So that'll be the key. So focus on the go to market while you're building the product rather than think of it after you build the product.
Yeah, I feel like that. I don't know if you've had, or seen this experience when you're having these conversations, or, seen it from the startups that you've consulted with and talked with. I almost feel like it can be quote unquote easier to continue to kind of make, whatever widget might be in an app a little bit better or a little bit more clickable, rather than sometimes have quote unquote conversations or going out and understanding exactly how it's going to impact the people that you're trying to serve. And I think so many times we can get caught up in the shiny objects, putting them within the things that we're building, rather than making sure that it's going to be something that is going to make that impact, that's going to draw, I think, even more and more people to be able to use what we're trying to build.
Yeah, entrepreneurs generally like to live or surround themselves in an environment where they control all the variables. the best way to control all the variables is to keep the variables small, and that means just work within yourself, right? The small team
Mm,
sometimes and individual sometimes, but you're dealing with a set of variables that you're controlling. But that's not how the market works, right? Market is an open like an open dome of unlimited amount of variables coming into play. So I think the key aspect I would sometimes I think about how to best to communicate that. I sometimes say sometimes you need to hire a marketing person before you even hire a tech person, right? But
mm,
that's not that you have to do that, but at least it communicates the need
the
for the
priority.
focus on that. The
Right.
I would say I've seen over my career some of the best ideas not being able to reach the market, not being able to reach the market for two reasons is because the they have run out of capital. That's a symptom of the problem, but the problem is the inability to focus on the product launches while the products are being built. So
Yeah, and that focus is so huge. I remember like reading or hearing about like how it talked about how the sun can be literally shining on like a ship that's on that a wood ship that's on the water. But if you really take a microscope and you put it under the sun, that concentrated effort actually can burn through that. And I think that's the same kind of mentality you have to have. If you're not having that focus, you do sometimes run out of different resources, whether it be capital or people, whatever it might be, because you're not as focused and understand this is exactly how we're going to impact the people that we're trying to build this for.
I agree. I totally agree. I
Awesome, awesome,
totally
awesome.
agree.
Well, now I wanted to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And our goal is to have different quote unquote CEOs on this show. So, Dan, what does being a CEO mean to you?
I mean, being a CEO is about being the evangelist for the purpose you're leading the team towards, right? And that's the primary purpose is the ability to let I think the ability to let people focus on that end goal, that mission that actually that the stream of which runs through the company, and being able to always think, focus, and try to remove all the distractions, and not only you but the people around you focus on the small simpler goals, right? And I think simpler goals are generally bigger goals. I always have this definition: the simpler goals are bigger goals, right? And I think the key would be to basically go ahead and want to do that every day. It is very, very easy for us to get up in the morning as an entrepreneur at 7 o'clock in the morning, turn on your Zoom or get to your office and hustle through everything, right? But at the end of the day, if you're able to filter out what's directly related, if you're able to filter out the items that are closest to your goals, I think you'll always become a better CEO, a better leader, a better manager, and most importantly, a person who basically connects with people. So for me, the key about being the CEO is constantly making sure that yourself personally and the world around you and the ecosystem that you have built over time is focused on the main goal every day, right? And so I think that's what is the hardest part of being the CEO. And it and I say this all the time: CEOs who are basically focused on the one simple goal are generally more hands-on, more involved with the business than CEOs who are basically kind of living, I hate to say this, but living in unreal realities, right? And it not only confuses the team around you, but actually confuses the company, the message, the purpose, and eventually it all catches up with the company and yourself. So yeah, so for me, being a CEO is about staying focused around a simple goal, the goal that you have always stood for, and as long as you're doing that all the time, it filters out all the stuff you don't need to worry about in most cases. So it's more important, I think, for CEOs to kind of basically, it's more important, I think, for them to choose what not to work on as important as just to know what to work on. So
Yeah, it's so powerful to be able to do that. I think, of course, it allows, your resources, the people on your team, the capital, whatever it might be, to all be aligned in the direction. But I think also too, it helps to kind of build that trust, amongst organizations and people that are within the organization. But I think on an even deeper level, once you have that simplicity, I think it's a really big kind of example of really strength and confidence and being able to kind of focus on that goal. I think so many times we can end up being like, I don't know if you ever seen the whack-a-mole game where things are popping up, you're trying to hit it. And a lot of times we do that with our goals and our initiatives and all the things we're focusing on, where we're never ahead, we're always behind, we never know where it's going to pop up. But if you have that alignment and you're focused on that one hole that you're trying to make sure that you hit, then it allows you, the people on your team and the organization to be able to execute on a bigger, better, and more impactful level. And I think that's ultimately, just like you said so well, the ultimate guard of the CEO.
I agree. I totally agree.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Dan, truly appreciate that definition. Of course, I appreciate your time even more. So, what I wanted to do now was pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional that you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best people can get a hold of you, your team, find out about the API, all the awesome things that you and your team are working on.
No, thanks for having me, Gresh. I really appreciate this. I've seen some of your videos. I think you do an amazing job, and thank you. I think you help the larger cause of building entrepreneurs in the country. So I greatly appreciate what you do. You can always get. I mean, the best way just to go to you go to Tradier.com, and that's probably the best way to get hold of of Tradier. I think we try our best to basically describe the products and all we do. We have the Tradier Hub, which is our own television live, I guess, live content studio that we telecast every day. So there's an amazing amount of content over there about what we do and how we are changing the lives of so many companies. Yeah, and everything about Tradier is on Tradier.com. And you can always reach service and figure out and have them send me a message, and I'll always connect back with you.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much again, Dan. Of course, we're gonna have the links and information, the show notes as well too, for the hub, the website, all the awesome things you and your team are working on. But I truly appreciate all the awesome work. It makes my job so much easier when you have awesome guests like you that have accomplished so many things. And I think just remembering to be focused and to have that simplicity in the things that we're trying to achieve and even over communicate are some of the really big things that we always can kind of take away. So thank you so much, my friend, and I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thanks for having me. Have a happy holiday.